Hey everybody, Bryce Koon here with another episode of The Crowded Booth. Yesterday we talked about Georgia Tech. We're moving to another program that's not too happy, that fan base as well. We're talking about the Auburn Tigers. What does it mean for them after a blowout loss at home, one of the worst losses in program history, the worst home loss since 2012 for Auburn? All that and more on today's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Well, hello everyone. Bryce Koon alongside Ralph Leary. Ralph is back, and I think he couldn't be back for more appropriate of an episode as we talk about the Auburn Tigers. Ralph, how you doing today, sir?
It's been a good day, man. We had a good weekend. I actually got to watch a little bit of football on Saturday. I was heartbroken Saturday, though, but,
we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, we were just
I'll just let the fans know Ralph's Troy Trojans nearly pulled off the upset of what I think is arguably right now America's team. There's really not a lot outside of your crew. Ralph, I'd say nationally, there's really not anybody that doesn't like App State. Like, they're just kind of like the feel-good story once again.
Yeah, I mean,
nationally.
I don't hate App State. I mean,
Solid program.
They're a great program. They have good coaches every year. They always play the right way. You know, the fans on the other hand took some aggression out on some of the players from Troy, but we're not going to talk about that. That'll be another story one day. If it comes out, it comes out. But I just know a few players got thrown water bottles at him after the game was. So we'll just talk about that later.
It's just college ball's crazy. It's crazy. A lot of things happened this past weekend.
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing.
Look, a lot of things indeed. Today we're talking Auburn and Penn State, and not necessarily a game recap, but more of what does this mean for Auburn. And so what I want to encourage you to do is subscribe to the channel. If you're listening, we know a lot of our radio listeners are going to be obviously caring about this one because a lot of them are Auburn fans. I want to start off by saying this is, look, Penn State's a solid team. Losing to them is not bad at all. Ralph, the young man in the backfield for them, Singleton, is he's an alien. That's what I want to call it. 10 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Penn State's ability to run the football in this game allowed Sean Clifford to be better. Like, there wasn't as much pressure on him to have to win a football game by himself. So I think this is just a solid team. AP poll has them number 14 in the country right now. Probably, there's not a massive gap between if you're ranked number 6 or number 12. Like, there's, especially this year, it's just not a massive gap as maybe there is between number 3 and number 7 in some years. So I think Penn State's a solid team. They've got a really, really interesting schedule the rest of the way, especially a mid-October game at Michigan. That's going to be a ton of fun. That could be a top 10 matchup by the time they get there. Then 2 weeks. Yeah, and then in 2 weeks they're going to be hosting Ohio State. So obviously, they've still got a lot to play for. And you get through those, if you could win those 2 football games, not out of the realm that you could win a Big Ten title and make yourself into the college ball playoff. So all that to be said, I don't think that Auburn fans are as upset that they lost the football game because Penn State's a solid team. It's a respectable team to lose to. One of the better, I would say, one of the better top 25, top 30 programs in the country year in, year out. So Penn State's just a good football team. Right. So all that to say, let's give Penn State, their due. They came in, they do what they need to do, and really, too, this is a big win for Penn State to be able to come into an SEC team's place and win. So we get that out of the way. This episode is more geared towards what it means for Auburn. So yes, Auburn is not a good football team. I don't want to take away what Penn State did, so that's why we took the first 5 minutes or so to really commend Penn State on what they did. No matter what you do and how you win it, you have to go on the road and win football games and dominate against teams that you're better than. Penn State did that. They did what they, expected to do. Good for them. This is the part that I think we have to get to because I've jokingly put in our picks that we have to stop acting like everything's okay at Auburn.
It's
like
not.
I think it's not, like, fundamentally. And so I want to say this, and I'll give it to you. I'm going to go do a little epilogue right here. Monologue. Not epilogue. Monologue.
Yeah. We're not ending it here.
We're not ending it here. But a monologue in this sense. To me, I like Brian Harsin, the person. Like, I really do. After the kind of crazy things that happened in the offseason, I think he handled himself very well. Like the way he speaks, he's a great ambassador, I think, of a person you want speaking on behalf of your program. Like just the way he handled that whole situation in front of the press, definitely not an easy position to be put into that he was. He did a great job with that. And I think with the fan base in the spring, the summer, SEC media days, like I think he did a good job of being realistic and like speaking about what this program was. And to me, he built up a lot of street cred, we'll say, kind of with the fans about where they were, kind of what the identity of this team would be. And I think, too, if you'd have told Auburn fans, Ralph, if this was going to be a team that was going to win 7 or 8 games, but there was going to be a blue-collar mentality, fans are like, okay, that they're going to have to fight, scratch, and claw. Fans know that this is not the most talented roster in recent years. But on Saturday, I think in the fact, not that they lost the game, we've already mentioned Penn State's solid team, the way that they lost that game takes away all the street cred that he had built up until this point. Because the identity that you painted Auburn to be, this bring your lunch pail to work type of program that's going to just, we may not have the most talented guys or we may not have the deepest roster, and I think both those things are true.
True.
But we are going to just work our butt off and we're going to get some grind out wins. We can talk about later, Ralph. I think a lot of that credit was lost in this game just by the manner in which you lost. Not the fact that you did, the way that you lost this football game kind of just takes away a lot of those things. And the biggest reason was the turnovers. It wasn't like they were unforced errors. Like Penn State forced the issue and Auburn just couldn't answer that bell. Like it's like if a boxer got knocked down, it didn't really feel like Auburn got up off the mat. Like it was kind of like they just kept getting on top of him, hitting him over again. Kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I try not to watch the game, I didn't want to watch a poor performance on the field as I was told, and I did watch a little of the second half as I could. I just feel like they couldn't find an option at quarterback. They just kept flipping back and forth between Finley and Ashford, and Ashford's stupid talented. I mean, he's fast. He's got a great arm. He's a baseball style player. You think of baseball style players in football. You think of Patrick Mahomes. You think of Russell Wilson. Those kind of guys. And sometimes they don't work out. You can't just expect one guy to get better playing 30 snaps a game.
Yeah.
And then come into and then practice, and you practice with the second team. Then you go play the next team where you get 30 snaps and as first string. You don't get better. You got to play one quarter at one game. Yeah. You do the 2 quarterback system at the beginning of the season to see who's better. Who you feel more confident with going into week 3 against Penn State. That's who you should play the whole game. Mm-hmm. If he screws up, then you switch to your other guy. Yeah. You don't switch back. That's the thing. And I don't think Harson's figured out who he wants at quarterback yet. And that's a problem because you're going into week 4 now. You're playing a SEC game. Now it's Missouri. It's 12 o'clock kickoff in Auburn. They'll be at home.
But you still got to show up.
You got to have something. Yeah. You got to put something on the plate here. You got to give the fans something.
And I think what you just said right there backs up what I said because it doesn't feel like there's an identity of this team.
Right.
Like, okay, of course, this team is supposed to be like, with Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter, they're supposed to be able to run the football. Ralph, they averaged 3.3 yards per rush. Like, they couldn't even run the football. Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter right now, Ralph, I screenshotted this, and I need to make sure I get this stat correct. I was reading this morning, and then I shot a text to a person that covers Auburn just to clarify. You ready for this?
I don't think I am.
Auburn's running backs, who are 2 very talented guys, and you and I have had the conversation, like probably 2 of the most talented guys in the conference and in the country.
Right.
They ranked 90th nationally before this game with 1.41 yards per contact, which means they were barely getting 2 yards before they got hit. Ralph, after this game, that number dipped all the way to 0.33. Ralph, they weren't getting a third of a yard before they were getting touched, and that's on the offensive line. So, look, Tank Bigsby is going to be a great running back, I think, at the next level. Right. He's a great running back. Jarquez Hunter, an electric player. They don't have an identity. Even without, you mentioned the quarterback issues, it's not like you can turn around and say, okay, we're going to rush for 150, 200 yards. They can't do that right now, and it's made this offense, in my opinion, just anemic. I mean, it's just a bad offense. You
want to go back to, 2019, I want to say. You usher in what Bo Nix's freshman year, I
Yeah.
think. Usher in Bo Nix freshman year. He gets a big win against Oregon, where he played lights out. Everyone's
Yeah.
like, "This guy's the future," which is who we thought he was. Auburn had an identity that season. If you think about it, go back to it. That defense was electric.
Yeah.
With Derek Brown, they had young talent. The secondary was solid. The whole team was good. And the whole defense was good, and the offense was okay. It was good and okay.
But the defense carried them where the
And
offense could grow.
Exactly, and they had an identity. The defense looked just as bad as the offense did on Saturday. I mean, you can't force turnovers. You had 3 tackles for a loss, no sacks. You hit Clifford on one play that was, if you saw Owen Papo rocked his world, everything was like, wow, this guy's, welcome to SEC football, and then they put 41 on your defense at home. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
Yeah. And I think, too, the biggest thing is I'm looking at this right here, and this is kind of the box score, and you and I mentioned it, that if you look at it, obviously turnovers made a massive impact in this game. But you hit the nail on the head, Ralph, when you said this. This team doesn't have an identity. In years past, it's been, we'll rely on the defense, and we'll hope the offense can do just enough.
Right.
Well, the offense is terrible, and the defense doesn't have the depth. They don't have the. I mean, Derek Hall is a great player. He's a great player. But that's why I think, Ralph, Auburn's roster is just a little weak. They don't have the same depth. I talked to somebody, Ralph, who said this. They were on the field pregame, and then they were on the field as the game was ending, and they cover Auburn. And he said, if you would have taken the jerseys, off of both teams and give them like those, you remember those practice pennies we used to have to wear like in PE, like the ones that never had been washed for like
the
9
mesh
years.
Ones?
Yes. If you'd have given them the mesh pennies, if that would have happened, you really wouldn't have been able to tell which one is an SEC caliber and which one was the Penn State team, just from a physical standpoint. And so it raises the question of where Auburn is, and this is kind of the last topic I have on this, is the reason I think Brian Harson's future is decided now is because if you go back into the recruiting rankings and you look at these two teams, it shouldn't be like that. They're pretty even, and Auburn even has an edge in some areas. But what does that mean, Ralph? It means development. It means that when so-and-so on Auburn's roster right now is a senior, he's the same that he was as a senior in high school now. And Penn State took guys that have now elevated and they've grown. Auburn hasn't done that. And so if there's one silver lining in this that I think Auburn fans, we can tell them and they can unite in this, is that before this game, I'll say this 48 hours ago, Ralph, you could find Auburn fans that said, yeah, Brian Harsin, you could have had a real argument, a debate. He needs to stay. He needs to go. Ralph,
you really can't argue. You really can't.
I don't think you can find a legitimate argument, Ralph, because when you look at the rest of that schedule, man, I mean,
it gets rough.
It gets rough, and I think a reality check is about to come to Auburn fans, and I think we saw a dose of that on Saturday.
Yeah. I can't really, say much more after that. It's true, though. I mean, if you really want to go back a little bit, go back to week 2. You play San Jose State at home. Yeah. You are physically should be way more prepared to beat them by 30 to 40 points easily.
Yeah.
You beat them by 8. That shit in your offense was horrendous in that game. It was just bad. And then, you beat Mercer 42-16. Okay. They still didn't really look that good. You were there. You watched the game.
Yeah.
I mean, you even told me Auburn doesn't really look that incredible. I agree.
In dominating fashion that you see some of these other teams beat FCS programs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you got Georgia coming up. Georgia is going to blow the doors off Auburn, and I'm going to watch it and I'm going to love it because all Auburn fans who thought this was going to be their year again, I'm sorry, it's not.
Yeah,
it's just like telling Georgia Tech fans that it's not going to be their season. You have a lot of work to do, and it starts with a head coaching job. It starts with the coordinators. It starts with the development of the program, and it really just starts with recruiting because there's no recruiting going on right now.
Yeah, the recruiting and then the development of those players. When guys come in, they've got to get better. I mean, we get caught up in star rankings, and I think that's awesome. But look, a 5-star does not mean that you're going to be an All-American. 5-star doesn't mean you're going to be all conference. A 5-star does not mean that you're going to be a starter at a college football program, and especially as a program like Auburn, where year in, year out, for a matter of fact, you're playing at least 2 top 5 teams in the country, most likely more, every single year. You've got to be able to develop some of those guys. And I got a show episode coming out tomorrow, Ralph, talking about Georgia and the mentality. And I want to just lean into that a little bit because, Georgia does an amazing job right now of just shattering dreams. Like, that's what they did last Saturday. Auburn right now, it's a mentality thing. And so I think we walk away from this game knowing that the Brian Harsin era at Auburn is coming to a close. It will. I think it's a matter of time. And I'll tell you this, too. Let's don't get caught in the sexy headlines. Let's don't get caught in the sex appeal. Auburn needs to find a winner. They need to find a builder. They need to find someone that can build this program, can delegate things to a good staff around them, because this program, and you know it, you grew up being a fan of this program. It's a proud fan base. And look, I grew up a Georgia fan. You know that. It's a proud fan base. I've gotten to see it firsthand through you and many other people we know. But this is a program that deserves better. A fan base deserves better. I think you got to go out there. You can't get caught in the sex appeal of, some of the big names. You just need to find yourself a winner and a guy that can build. Because this program, we know it. We've seen it. You can win at Auburn even with playing Alabama and Georgia every single year. You just got to find the right guy. And, look, I don't want to go doomsday. We'll talk about this more later on in the year. But if you don't get it right this next time, I hate to see where this program, how much further it could go down.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it spot on, Bryce. I mean, it's just, you got to find yourself a winner. If Harson's gone a bit by the end of the year, you think about it, start the coaching search early on. You're going to find coordinators who possibilities. I mean, I have a lot of names in my head. I've told you for Georgia Tech in the future, and everyone's the big name going around, and it's not going to happen. It's Deion Sanders. He's not leaving Jackson State for Auburn. Yeah. That'd be the worst decision of his career.
One, he is not in it for money. We know that. No. And he's in it to build up HBCU programs. That's what he wants.
He's not going to do that at Auburn. He's not doing that at Auburn. So sorry, people, get out of your head. He's not going to Tech. He's not going to Florida State. He said he will never take the Florida State job. Ever. Yeah. And he played there.
Yeah.
So, it's the next few weeks is going to be interesting for Auburn. I mean, if they win a few of those games, props to them. They're going to get blown out by Georgia. That's all I can say from right now.
It's going to be interesting to see how that transpires as well. But
it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Let's just say that.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, how much worse going to get. It's going to get rough for sure. But listen, we appreciate everyone tuning in. Another very, very quick episode of the Crowded Booth. Actually, not, Ralph, nearly 20 minutes long. We had some good conversation. Auburn plays Missouri this week, but make sure to stay tuned to the channel. If you're listening on the radio, we appreciate it as well. Hit subscribe, hit the like button. That helps us because we got some great episodes coming out talking Georgia tomorrow. And then Georgia Tech fans, if you decide to tune into this one, the Tech and Auburn fans potentially are going to be in close quarters with each other because they may not have head coaches much longer. We'll see how long that goes as well. But college football is here.
Something here, Bryce?
I'm just dropping some nuggets here on the broadcast. We'll talk to you later, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.